and welcome to another lawnfawn video. Today we are so excited to be introducing our new stamp set, Apple-solutely Awesome, and its coordinating dies. We're also going to be introducing our apple border dies and our simple stitched tree border dies as well. So let's go ahead and check these out. First, we're going to take a look at the Apple-solutely Awesome stamp set, and the center point of this set is that adorable apple tree. We also have this cute little mouse eating apples. We've got this little guy in overalls. We have a barrel of apples, a little ladder to climb up to those apples at the top of the tree, a little jug of apple cider, and also a glass of apple cider too. We also have a caramel apple, and I'm guessing an apple pie. And we've got this cute little steam that can come out of the pie. We also have a cute plain apple and also like a sliced open apple and then just an apple slice as well. That's all fun for helping set the scene. We have this cute little heart and then this great little posted sign and all these different phrases you can put inside of it. You could also put the heart inside of it too. We have bushel of fun, apple picking, yum, fresh apples. We also have these cute little phrases that say crunch and pick, and I love the crunch one with the little guy that's eating the apples. And then we have a couple different styles of smiley face that you can add to the apples, which is really adorable, especially on the tree. There's also a larger smiley face that fits in the sign, and then some rosy cheeks that you can add to the small or larger smiley faces. We have some really great mix and match sentiments. So we have "You're the apple of my eye," or "You're Apple-solutely awesome." We have an Apple-solutely awesome day, you could fill in there, and also thanks, which is really great to have too. Now I'm going to use Copic markers to add some color to these fun images, and I just love coloring in this tree. It is so much fun, and I decided to use my E30 markers, but any shade of brown would look just gorgeous on the tree. Megan from our team even stamped it on some wood grain paper and paper pieces, so you can even do it with pattern paper too, and it's just so much fun to color in. I'm also so excited that our mice are back and up to something new. They're picking apples this time, which is just so cute and fun. The other thing I really love about all of our mice sets is that you can mix and match them. So all the mice are the same size, so you can mix and match and create cute interchangeable scenes. Now I went ahead and started adding some bright greens to these leaves, and this green color combo is the one that Tammy always uses. And ever since we learned about this combo, both Rebecca and I here at Lawn Fawn were like, we have to use this combo all the time. It's so pretty. Tammy, you are amazing. Best green color combo ever. I love these three markers together. It's just so bright and so pretty. And so I'm going to be repeating the same color of green on all the leaves on the tree and all of the individual apples. And we'll also be using the same red combo too. That way you can mix and match and have everything match really well as you put it on your card. Now, speaking of getting color combos from your amazing friends, this color combo is one of Jen's combos. I love how she brings in the R35 marker to the R29 and R24. I think it's so pretty. And by just adding that R35 along the edge of the apple, it just darkens the edge enough to make it just look so bright and beautiful. Sometimes she'll just use R35 and R29 together, and that looks so gorgeous too. So definitely try this combo as well. Now I'm going to color in the mice in some light browns. The other way I really like coloring the mice in is some warm grays. Warm grays are kind of nice because it brings in a different tone into like the brown tree and brown ladder, or you can stick within the same tones like I did here, and now we have some cute little light brown mice with the brown of the tree and the ladder, etc. Now for the little overalls, I'm going to do these kind of darker blue-green markers. I think it looks really cute as the overalls. And then you'll see I'm bringing in different shades of brown so that they're all a little bit different. So now the ladder is in these E40, so it stands out from the browns that I used for the barrel or the tree or the mice. So it's kind of fun because you can really get a lot of different looks out of the markers that you have. Now here I'm going to go ahead and color in the barrel, and you can do the whole thing wooden, or I've also seen people do the horizontal parts in more of a gray so it looks like metal, and I think that looks really pretty too. And I'm going to use those same browns now to create my sign there, and once I color that all in, I can stamp one of those cute little phrases into the sign. Next, we're going to work on the cider, and I really like these YR markers for the cider. I think it looks so cute. And that little glass of cider is so cute. It's so fun for setting different scenes in because the mice can be holding onto the glass, holding onto the pie. It's just so cute and fun. Same for that little caramel apple as well, which we'll color in, and then we'll just add a little color to those apple slices, and now we can use our coordinating dies. We can bend those apart at the tabs or use our wire snips to separate them. Then we can line up these dies with the stamped images, hold it in place with some low-tack tape, run it through the die cut machine, and we'll have beautifully cut images every time. And here is a look at all of the images from this set, and they are so fun to mix and match and create cute little scenes. So you can take that ladder and put it up against the tree and have that little mouse picking an apple from the tree. You can have them holding all of those cute little items or even put the heart into that little post. It's just so much fun to play around with. I just love it. Now here is a look at the apple border dies, which has apples, leaves, and then some individual leaves. And that string of leaves makes this really, really easy to put together. The first step is to add green leaves onto the brown stem. So we're just going to add a little drop of glue tube and then we can layer those little leaves on nice and quickly. And wait till you guys see the card later on in the video that Shari made with this. It is so cute. So we're going to layer on some more green leaves. And then we'll add a row of glue just along that bottom bar. And that bar is what's going to tuck behind the apples. And so this lets you add a bunch of stems all at once, which makes it super quick and easy to put this apple border die together. So here you can see just how cute this is. It's really easy to cut apart and just use sections of it, or you could use the whole thing on your card. We have a fun card today, and we're going to be using it in a video later on in the week as well. Next up, we have our simple stitched tree border. And this tree border is so great because there are so many different ways that you can use it. It's got the little trees and then it has those little blobs that you can put behind the trees to act as your leaves. And so there's a bunch of ways to use these all for different seasons. So first up here, we're going to create more springy, summery trees. We're going to add some green right behind that. And I love the different shapes of the blobs so you can kind of mix and match it. And I just love the look of this. It's so fun and unique. You can also do something that's a little bit more fall. So we're going to add in some orange. You could do reds and yellows as well and create a really fun fall background. Another thing you could do would be to cut it out of black cardstock and not add the little blobs, and they could be spooky Halloween trees, or you can die cut them out of white cardstock and it can be like a whole snow-covered hillside in the background. So I love that there's so many fun ways to use these trees, and Shari's going to make a super cute card at the end with them. But first up, we are going to be creating an Apple-solutely awesome card, and we are recreating a stunning card by Elena. And we're going to be using the stitched hillside backdrop die, and we're going to die cut some Watercolor Wishes paper, and that's going to be our beautiful green hillside. Then we're going to be die cutting a stitched rectangle frame, and so we're going to die cut this out of some white cardstock. And then for the sky, we're going to take out some spiffy speckles paper, and that's cut down to 5.5 by 4.25. Now the first step is to stamp the sentiment before we start to decorate. So we're going to put that in the MISTI and stamp one of the fun sentiments from this set. And it says, "You're Apple-solutely awesome." And saying that always makes me smile. It's just so cute and fun. And then we're going to add some tape runner on the back and layer that onto our blue sky. Now, next up, we're going to take out the Apple-solutely awesome set, and we're going to take a bunch of images from the set. We're going to do something really, really cool with the tree. So we've colored and die cut 2 trees, but we're going to take one of those trees and we're actually just going to cut it in half. Use a paper trimmer here and trim it right down the center. This is going to make it look like we have 3 trees on our card and that like this apple tree farm just keeps going and going and going. So you'll see here we're going to trim it in half and wait till you see what this looks like when you put it on the card. And when we saw Elena do this, we were like, this is brilliant. It's amazing because you're only having to color 2 trees, but it looks like you have 3 on your card. So we're going to layer this right there on the edge of the card, and eventually we're going to cover up that border there with the frame. So that's why we can kind of go right to the edge, and you'll see that that's already looking like there's 2 trees, and now we're going to add our 3rd tree into the center. And then now that the background's done, we can start filling in the scene. So we're going to add that cute little ladder, and then that little guy in overalls, he's going to be holding an apple, and then we're going to layer some barrels of apples as if he's been kind of picking a bunch of apples throughout the day. We can add our cute little apple picking sign, and then another little apple right down there. And of course, the little guy that's sitting around there eating apples is just so cute and adorable. And then we're going to layer that white frame on, and you'll see that that frame makes that whole triple tree idea background that we did just look seamless. Now here is a standard size card at 5.5 by 4.25. We can layer this whole scene on top, and this card is done. It's so cute and so easy to make, and I think it would just make anyone smile. The next thing that we are going to do is create a Peekaboo pop-up with the Apple-solutely awesome set. And if you haven't made a Peekaboo pop-up yet, make sure to check out the intro to Peekaboo pop-up video. We're going to link it in the description below. So the first thing we're going to do is die cut two pieces from the main Peekaboo pop-up piece. And we're going to make sure that the score lines are on the right side on one of them and on the left side on the other. And the one that has the score lines on the left side, we are going to create a valley fold. So you'll see there we folded it to make it look like a little valley. And then on the other one, the one that has the score lines on the right-hand side, we're going to create a mountain fold. So these two pieces are going to look kind of opposite of each other, just like that. We've got our mountain and our valley. Now, the one that has the valley, that is going to be our front piece, the one that we're going to die cut with a border die. Now, the Peekaboo pop-up comes with a border die, but you can use any border die in your stash. And so in this case, we're going to take a grassy hillside border. And I'm using one of those trees there as a guide as to how high I want this grassy hillside to go. And I want it to kind of go right above the bottom of that tree. And then I can hold this die in place with some low-tack tape. We'll run it through the die cut machine. And now we have our little grass that's going to go on the front of the Peekaboo pop-up, and we have our sky for the back. Now for the sky, we're going to be creating a beautiful sunset using worn lipstick and tattered rose inks. And right now we are recreating a card by Grace that was just so stunning. So thank you so much, Grace. And I just loved this sky that she created. So we're going to create kind of a blend between the two colors. Then I'm going to smear the darker pink ink, which is the worn lipstick, on my mat, add a little bit of water, and we're going to use that as a paint. The other thing I'm going to do is spray some water onto the background. It's going to react with the ink and create some really cool splatters and texture. And then now I'm going to add that water there to the ink. We're going to pick it up with a paintbrush, and then we're going to tap the paintbrush to create splatters all over the card. Once again, adding more texture to the sky, and you can see it just come to life. Next, we're going to work on the grass, and we're going to cover the whole thing in twisted citron ink, which is a nice light green. Then we're going to take a darker green, in this case mowed lawn, and just come in from the top. And that's going to give us this really pretty gradient. Then to have it match our sky, we're going to spray some water on there and pick it up with a paper towel to get that same texture that we created on the sunset background piece. Then we're going to let these two pieces dry, and now we have the front and the back of our Peekaboo pop-up. Next, we're going to take that grass piece and we're going to flip it over, and we're going to add some tape runner to the right of that last score line, just right there. So we're going to add that tape runner just covering that whole area to the right of the score line. Then we can flip it over and line it up with the base there, our sky piece that we colored with our pink ink. So we're going to line those two up and secure that in place. And then we can open it up like a book. The Peekaboo pop-up has 3 different mechanisms, so we've chosen one of the mechanisms. I die cut it from some white cardstock, but I want it to match our sky. So I had my inks out still, and I'm going to ink it up with that worn lipstick and tattered rose. When I ink up these mechanisms, I always like to ink up the back and the front, because sometimes when the mechanism is moving, you can kind of see the underside of it. So I always ink both sides no matter what, just to be safe. Now it's time to fold the mechanism. So you'll see here on the die that there are 2 score lines. We are going to fold those score lines towards ourselves. So we're going to make sure to fold that one right there towards ourselves, towards our body. Then we're going to do the next one right there, folding that over. Then we need to add a little bit of adhesive, and we're going to add that to the triangle that does not have the arm sticking out of it. So we're going to add some adhesive right there onto that triangle. Then you're going to take the mechanism and flip it over. We're going to open the grass piece kind of like a book, and we're going to add the mechanism a little bit under the blades of grass and just a little bit in from the edge. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Wherever you put it, it's going to work really, really great. Once that's securely in there, then you can go ahead and hold it in place and close that grass piece kind of like a book again. Then we'll fold in the base piece, and you'll see how these 2 pieces are going to line up. Where those 2 pieces line up, we're going to add some tape runner, and then we can line the 2 pieces up, securing those in place, and that is what's going to form our mechanism. And here you can see as you open up the card, that little mechanism is going to move up and down, and that's what's going to create our amazing interactive card. So now it's time to decorate it with the Apple-solutely awesome stamp set. One of my favorite things to do to add some nice dimension to Peekaboo pop-up cards is to add things overlapping over that fold. So that's what we're going to do with this apple tree. We're going to add that right there on the edge, and it's going to go into the center of the card. And because it's on that fold, it really gives it this kind of shadow box feel to the card. Then we're going to add another little apple in the scene, and we're going to kind of keep filling in the scene. And I like adding some things to the scene because it's going to help me decide exactly where I want to put my critter that's going to move on that mechanism. So the scene I want to create is I want to have the little mouse on the ladder and he's going to pop up and pick an apple from the tree. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere the mouse to the ladder. And I'm just going to lay him on top of the mechanism to give me kind of a guide as to where I think the apple tree should go. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is take my apple tree, I'll add some adhesive to that, and then I'm going to layer that into the scene. So I'm going to actually kind of tuck that in behind all of that grass. Now I can add some adhesive to my cute little ladder and I'm going to line him right up with that apple with the mechanism fully open. So I know that he's going to be in the right placement as I move it. And now I'm going to check it and see, is it going to work? It does. So now I can go ahead and trim off any of that excess mechanism. So I'm going to trim it all the way up at the very top of the ladder there. That way you really don't see the mechanism much at all. And then I'm going to test it again and see, and you'll see that as you open it up, I mean, look how cute this is. Oh, I can't. I played with it over and over and over again. So now I'm going to start filling in some of the rest of the scene. We're going to add another little barrel of apples. We can add some other cute little scene builders there, extra apples. We can add the little guy that's biting the apple who's just adorable. And then we'll add a cute little sign that we've stamped the apple picking into. And then I'm going to play around with my card again and make sure that everything's kind of fitting in. Once I start adding more things to the scene, I want to make sure that they're not getting in the way of my little scene that happens as I open up the card, and it's looking really great. So now it's time to work on the sentiment. So we're going to use an anti-static powder tool on some black cardstock, and we're going to stamp 2 sentiments in some clear embossing ink. You're absolutely awesome and thanks. And I'm stamping it at the top and the bottom of this piece so it makes it really easy for me to trim them down later. Then I can sprinkle on some white heat embossing powder, and then we're going to heat that up with the heat tool. And we're going to do kind of like a split sentiment here. Then I'm just going to take this piece in my paper trimmer and I'm going to trim these little pieces down so they almost look like little labels. And now we'll trim down the thanks as well. Now the longer sentiment, we're going to add that towards the bottom of the card, and it's almost going to become like a little shelf for the rest of the scene. I almost imagine it like it's almost like a little picnic blanket that this cute little mouse is going to sit on. And then we're going to add the thanks there at the top of the card. And I made sure to close the card to make sure the thanks was in a nice placement when the card is closed and when the card is open. And then now we're using that piece at the bottom as our little like imaginary picnic blanket where we're going to lay the little mouse with his cider, and then this little guy is going to be holding a sliced apple here. And then we're going to add, of course, some more apple goodies there with the caramel apple and the pie. And now this card is all done. And look how fun and cute this is. I just love the look of that little guy appearing up out of nowhere to pick an apple. It's so cute. It's so sweet. It makes me smile, and I cannot wait to send this card to someone. Now, next up, Shari is going to blow you away with the cutest teacher card ideas. So take it away, Shari.
So I'm using the apple border dies today to create a teacher card. I've cut the apples from some red textured canvas cardstock. I've cut the stems from some kraft cardstock, and then I've cut the leaves from both cilantro cardstock and noble fir cardstock. Now for the stems, the die cuts this line, this bar that connects them all together. I'm just going to put a line of liquid glue along that bar. And this is a really smart way you can add all these stems all at once to the whole line of apples. So I'm just lining it up on my grid mat just to kind of use that to eyeball the straightness of this. And I use the liquid glue so that once I have this layered together, I do have the ability to kind of shift it around a little bit. So I had it a little bit crooked, and I can easily just shift that right side up to where all my stems are placed right on my apples, and then I can make sure that that bar that connects them all is hidden behind the apples so that I don't have my stems too high. Next, I'm going to go through and just put a little dab of glue on those leaves that are cut out from that stem die. And then I can add my little die cut leaves. Now you can see I'm leaving off the glue on the ones on the far left and the far right. That's because I'm actually going to be cutting down this row of apples a little bit and making it shorter. So I don't need to worry with putting leaves on those two because I'm going to trim those off. And I'm just going through and adding my leaves so that I have a variety of the dark and the light colors. So I'm going to set my apples aside and make my blackboard. I'm actually using the 4-bar rectangles, the stitched rectangles. I'm using a paper bag one for the border and then a smaller one for the blackboard or chalkboard part. I'm also going to pull out the Picket fence border die and use this trim piece to cut another piece of paper bag cardstock, and then this will be the little shelf at the bottom of the chalkboard where the apples will sit. So before I assemble my chalkboard with the apples along the bottom, I want to stamp a sentiment. And I'm going to be using Quinn's ABCs for the big part of the sentiment which says thanks. I'm actually going to move this over to my Misty to stamp. And then the second part of the sentiment comes from the Thanks of Bushel stamp set and finishes it out saying thanks for being my teacher. And I'm going to be white embossing this onto that black cardstock so it looks like it's drawn on a chalkboard. So I'm just making sure this is lined up. And I already prepped my piece of cardstock with an anti-static powder tool. I'm using some clear embossing ink to stamp my sentiment down. And then I will cover that in the white embossing powder, making sure it's all covered. Tap off the excess. And then I'll heat that up with my heat tool. So I have this nice bright white sentiment that looks like it's been drawn in chalk on the chalkboard. Now the next thing I'm going to do is color these letters in with my colored pencils. So colored pencils on dark cardstock are a really fun way to get a different look. I really like doing this when I have the opportunity to do so. So I just picked out a rainbow of colors and I'm coloring each one in a different color. So this really makes it look like someone wrote this on the chalkboard and used all those really fun colors of chalk to fill in the letters, because the colored pencil on that dark cardstock has that really fun chalky look to it. And you can lay it on pretty thick or pretty light depending on the look you want. And you can see that I tested my colors on that little extra piece of black to pick out the colors that looked good on this dark cardstock. Now that that is all finished, I can glue this onto that bigger stitch rectangle cut from paper bag and give my chalkboard a nice frame. Now I can take that little shelf piece that I cut earlier with the die and just trim it down. I'm trimming this so that it is slightly longer than the border around the chalkboard, so it kind of sticks out on each end, and it's going to be long enough to catch the 6 apples in the center of my border. And then I can just trim off the apple on each end. There is a little die cut mark that kind of separates them, and I'm using that as my guide to just clip those little pieces of cardstock that are holding it together and just trim off those 2 extra apples and give myself a shorter line of apples that fits perfectly on the front of my chalkboard. But before I glue those together, I'm going back to that Thanks a Bushel stamp set. This stamp set has all these cute little faces that you can stamp on the apples in the stamp set. And I thought it would be fun to stamp those little faces on these die cut apples. There's a lot of faces in this set, so I can stamp a different face on every apple. And I just thought this was a really fun way. It's almost like all the personalities of the kids in a classroom coming through on these apples that are sitting along the bottom of the chalkboard. I made a point to make sure I use 2 with glasses so that we have quite a variety. And then I'm just going to add a little dab of glue to the bottom of all the apples on the back side, and this will allow me to glue them like they're sitting on this little shelf, because this little shelf is going to butt up against the bottom of this chalkboard. So it's not really gluing to the chalkboard, but this is a good way to glue it on. So I can glue it to the bottom of my apples, and then once it's stuck down, this is all one piece that I can attach to the chalkboard. So I'm pulling out my Into the Woods pattern paper pack. I want to make some wallpaper for my wall where this chalkboard's going to go, and I thought that this little blue with a white dot would be perfect. It's not too distracting, but it has some fun texture to add to the background rather than just a solid piece of cardstock. So I've just trimmed this piece of pattern paper down to 4¼ by 5½ and put adhesive all over the back so that I can put it onto a card base. Next, I'm adding some thin foam squares to the back of each of my apples. And then I can just add this to the bottom of my chalkboard, and I'm lining up the top of that little shelf that the apples are sitting on with the bottom of the chalkboard frame. Now this is all one piece that I can add to my card base. And I'm going to add some foam tape all over the back of my chalkboard. And this way the whole thing is popped up off that card base. So I'll just center that up onto my card. And then finally, I thought I'd add a little bit more chalk to my chalkboard. So I pulled out the yellow and the pink pencil, and I'm just adding some stars and some hearts. Looks like the kids had fun decorating their message to the teacher. And then finally, I thought it needed a little bit of texture, so I decided to break out my jute twine here and tie a little bow at the top. I thought this just added a little something extra to the card and fit in with the teacher's theme and the apples and the chalkboard really well. So I'll just trim out the ends, and here is my finished card. I love the look of that color pencil like chalk on the chalkboard, and then those cute little apples are so cute, and I loved adding those cute little faces to them. So much fun. So to start my card today, I'm going to make a cloudy sky. I've cut a stitched rectangle out of some Bristol cardstock, and I'm going to be using my cloud stencil to create a sky. I'm going to change up my colors a little bit here. I'm using 2 distress colors to create my sky. I've put my Bristol cardstock onto my media mat with a little bit of removable adhesive just to hold it in place, and then I'll use my magnets to hold my stencil in place. So I'm starting out with some salvage patina up here towards the top. And then once I get that inked the way I like it, I'm going to take my stencil off and shift it around so I get some different cloud formations and just kind of figure out where I want that to be. Put my magnets down to hold it in place, and then I'm also using tumbled glass. So the color difference between these two is not very different. They're both very light blue colors, but I thought that using these 2 different shades might give a little more depth and interest to the sky. So again, I'm just going in with my brush and putting on that tumbled glass. I'm trying to use my magnets to make sure I cover up the little part at the bottom so I don't get any ink where I don't want to. And then I'm just working my way down, just turning my stencil and figuring out where I want those cloud formations to fall in regard to the line above it. So again, I'm back to my salvage patina, and I'm just going to work my way all the way down the panel, going back and forth between the 2 colors. Now that I'm at the bottom, I have this big white space, and I'm just going in with the blue and filling that in. Honestly, I probably didn't need to do this because this is going to get covered up by the ground. And I switched over to my salvage patina because my tumbled glass is actually pretty dry, and I re-inked it right after I finished this card. So now my sky and my clouds are done, and I'm going to add some white metallic watercolor splatters to add some little bit of shine and things that will catch your eye when the light hit it. So I've just gotten that soupy, and I'm just tapping my paintbrush to get all those splatters everywhere. You can see I got a really big one at the bottom down there, but again, as I said before, that's going to get covered up, so I'm not really too worried about that. I'll set it aside to dry, and then I can work on my stitched trees. So the new simple stitched tree border die fits with the shallowest of the simple stitched hillsides. You can see they have the same curve. I've cut a piece of paper bag cardstock with a stitched rectangle. This is the largest outside in stitched rectangle, and I'm going to use this to cut my trees. Then I've done the same with a piece of cilantro, and what I'm going to do is line up this curve to cut that stitched hillside as best I can by butting it up against the curve of my trees. I'll put 2 little pieces of tape to hold it in place, making sure that I'm not taping down that paper bag cardstock, and then I can just slide my little trees out from under. Now it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to work just fine. And what little bit of paper bag cardstock might peek out, I can always just trim off. Then I can add some liquid glue and layer these two together. So that stitched hillside that I cut will line up perfectly with that curve of the hillside with the tree die. And actually, I ended up with my paper bag cardstock was slightly shorter, so I didn't have to trim anything off. So that worked out perfectly. Now to create the leaves of my trees, I have the two dies that cut out the blobs for the tree leaves, and I want to cut these out of some pattern paper. I actually did not use that orange from the Into the Woods. I thought it was a little too orangey, but I did use the yellow with the little polka dots and that reddish color from Sweater Weather. So I've just cut a bunch of these out, and I'm figuring out kind of where I want their placement. So I've got 3 yellow trees and 2 red ones. And then I'm going to flip this over and just add some dots of glue to the back of the trees and put those tree canopy of leaves behind the tree branches. This is one of my favorite dies. I really love the old version with kind of the S-shaped hill, so I'm really glad to have the simple hill to add to my stitched tree hillsides. So now that I have all my trees done, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment along the bottom. This is a part of the sentiment that says absolutely awesome day. I will add the first part of the sentiment that says have an at the top of my card a little bit later. But I want to go ahead and stamp this along the bottom, and then I will know my placement and I can add all my images above. So I want to stamp my sentiment first. Now I can add this to my cloud background that I created earlier. So I've just put liquid glue all over the back of my trees and my hillside there. And I'll just line this up against the bottom of that rectangle. I used the same stitched rectangle to cut out the Bristol cardstock that I stenciled on as I did the hillside. And then I'm adding this whole panel to a kraft cardstock card base, and because I use the outside in stitch rectangle, I'm going to get this fun thin kraft frame around it. I think this has a really fun fall look. I really like doing this on fall cards. Now to build the rest of my scene, I've pulled out images from the Absolutely Awesome stamp set as well as the Crazy Antics, because I have those cute little mice and that picnic blanket. The picnic blanket is going to be the centerpiece for my picnic. So I've started by putting that in the center. And then I'm using thin foam squares to add all of these little elements. So I've got that apple pie, and of course those steam lines, which I just added with glue directly to the card base. I love this little apple slice, and it fits perfectly in this little mouse's hand. And I'll be sitting these 2 mice that are sitting down. They're going to sit on my picnic blanket. Then I love this little jug of cider. And of course we have a candy apple. It is a Apple-licious picnic that's happening here. Now a cute little guy in the overalls. He's got a cider in hand. He is ready to eat some apple pie and cider. And then of course I have this little guy that is already chowing down on an apple. And then because this little apple that's sliced in half is just too adorable, I'm adding that as well. That's the rest of the apple that the apple slice came from. And then finally, I need to add the rest of my sentiment that finishes it out that says, have an absolutely awesome day. So I've cut a banner from some Noble Fur cardstock, stamped it with clear embossing ink, and added some white embossing powder. I'm just heating that up, and then I'm adding this to the left side. It's going to go off the side of the card, and then I'll just trim it off. And this is a really good way to kind of break up the sentiment so you don't have such a long one across the bottom of the card. And here is my finished card with all these cute little mice having a serious apple picnic out in the apple orchard for fall. I'm ready for fall after making this card.
I am just so in love with both of these cards, Shari. Your cute little picnic is just so sweet, and this teacher card is so clever. I love that chalkboard so much. And next up, we have some incredible cards by the design team. And first up, we have a card by Yania that is just beautiful. I can't get over how gorgeous that watercolor background is, and I love the gingham paper with it. This card by Callie is stunning. That sunset she created is so pretty and perfect for this card. I love how Mindy got super clever and she brought our barn in as a perfect backdrop for these cute apple picking mice. Here, this card by Audrey is so sweet, and I love those little cloud frames that she has in the background and all the cute little mice hanging out. And then here, this card by Elise is awesome. I love her different colors of apples too. It looks so cool all together. This is the card by Elena that inspired us to make ours today. I just love the look of the apple tree forest feeling like it continues on forever. And this card by Maureen is so sweet. I love that stencil grass she made, and this little mouse there drinking the cider just cracks me up. I just love how Kara integrated the rows of apples into this beautifully striped card and how the sentiment is along the stripe too. It's just so fun. And then this is the Peekaboo pop-up card by Grace that inspired us to make ours today. It's just so beautiful and so much fun to see that cute little mouse pop up and pick an apple. Here, Lynette shows us that our new simple stitch tree border is perfect for Halloween too. I just love it die cut out of black with that beautiful spooky stenciled sky she created. I love how Tammy created a slimline card. It's perfect for setting this super cute scene, and her custom sentiment just makes me smile. Here, Megan added this beautiful tree into a platform pop-up card, and it is just so cute. And then here, I love this clean and simple teacher card by Mindy. It's so much fun, and you could create a ton of these for all the teachers in your life. This card by Letitia is just beautiful. I love those bright blue clouds in the background. And then here, I love this Apple-solutely awesome card by Lynette and how she stacked the sentiment and added a cute little bow tied in twine. And then here, Kara also added some apple trees into a platform pop-up, and it is just gorgeous. So we cannot wait to see what you guys do with all of these fun Apple products, so make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and we hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!